Here's the deal. Come on, man. Senator Hagerty of Tennessee is here to talk about what is a real crisis at the border. They're looking now at the highest number of illegal immigrants surging the border in over 20 years. And there are a lot of large surges in the interim those last 20 years. So this is a crisis. It is one of Joe Biden's own making. And yet he's denying the very words that he said just this past September. Your reaction, Senator?
Well, Sean, thank you for having me today, and my reaction is just the same as yours. This is a crisis of Biden's own doing. He invited them, just as you underscored, and playing back his own words from the campaign. He's even created incentives now. If you look at what's inside this, quote, COVID relief package, illegal immigrants are going to get a check. So all the wrong incentives are in place. He's stopped all border enforcement, and it's amazing. They want to see schools shut, but they want to keep our borders open. I find it just incredible.
And they're even putting people that test positive in hotels, but there's no checks to see if they stay in that hotel or if they go out and with the possibility of infecting innocent people. And then, of course, Americans are going to have to pay the bill for as many people as ultimately come across. That means education. That'll mean health care. That'll mean probably ultimately impacting the criminal justice system, assuming some people break laws, right?
Oh, absolutely. And my fellow Tennesseans see this all the way in Tennessee. It's not just at the border, Sean. I was talking with a couple of sheriffs yesterday in Tennessee. They've already seen a surge in crime, particularly illegal drug usage. And these drugs are coming right across that open border in Mexico. This is something that's got to be dealt with. You mentioned Biden's removal of the Migrant Protection Protocol, the Stay in Mexico plan. That was working. President Trump's plan was working, keeping people there in Mexico and dealing with the problem in that regard. Letting them come across the border as they're doing right now and failing to adjudicate this, they're just letting them cross the border, at every point. They've stopped building the wall, as you mentioned. Today, along with 39 of my colleagues, we sent a letter to the Government Accounting Organization about this because we believe that this is an infringement of Congress's power of the purse. If the monies were appropriated, the Biden administration doesn't have the authority to freeze border wall construction, stop funding it. We appropriated the funds. They've got to come back to Congress before they can stop it. We're going to push back on this as hard as we can.
All right. This to me is all madness and insanity. Now, a couple of other things, because in 2018, if you recall, President Trump was accused of putting kids in cages. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
Then we found out something that was very interesting. We learned that the video that most of the media, I call them the mob because they have a mob mindset and mentality, all the media mob were playing, well, that actually was video from 2014. Those cages were built by Joe and Barack. They weren't built by Donald Trump. Now we have kids in cargo shipping containers. I'm not sure if you've had an opportunity to see the outside of them. I'd love to show you the inside of them, but we can't get any of our reporters inside because they won't let us inside. Imagine the reaction if Donald Trump was the president and he was putting kids, unaccompanied minors, in cargo shipping containers with a tiny window with bars on it, and we're told butterflies on the walls. I don't think that would go over that well. Do you?
Not at all, Sean. I agree with you completely. As you say, if President Trump had allowed this to happen, it would have been the biggest humanitarian crisis ever. Now the Biden administration refuses to even use the word crisis, as you acknowledged before. Mayorkas, again, refused to use that term today. This is a crisis, just as you describe it. It's going to be the greatest humanitarian crisis that many of us have seen in our lifetimes.
We have other issues now that are out there. We got finally, Joe, to answer a question. And this is the problem if you run a presidential campaign hidden in a basement bunker, rarely, if ever, taking any questions and just showing up for the bare minimum 2 debates and a virtual speech at the Democratic National Convention. We never got to the issue of court packing. We never got to the issue of D.C., Puerto Rico statehood. We never got to the issue of ending the legislative filibuster. I'm sure you heard by now the Biden's answer on ending the filibuster. I'm sure you know Mitch McConnell's reaction to it. Joe Manchin says it should be harder. That seems in keeping what Joe was telegraphing last night, all things that were not told to us before the campaign, things that I warned a lot about, now becoming a reality. Can they literally get any of that done, in your opinion?
Well, I'd say this, Sean. You know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, a global pandemic. We're in the middle of a recession we're trying to recover from. And as you so clearly articulated, we've got a border crisis going on. Yet their number one priority is to shove through this H.R. 1, and they're willing to destroy the Senate filibuster to do it. And that would turn the Senate into a body just like the House of Representatives. It would take away the long-standing history of open debate here. And I am, extremely concerned that that's the direction they're going to go, because it's all about power to the Democrats. That's what
the strategy is outlined by Mitch McConnell. Would it be effective enough to push back on ending the legislative filibuster? In other words, apparently they could tie things up in such knots that literally Mitch McConnell was saying, okay, well, if that's what you want, it's going to be a, quote, weapon of mass obstruction. And he said if that happened, they would use every arcane Senate rule that is now available, one of which would require unanimous consent to even turn the lights on before noon. And he says they're going to use every other rule to make tens of millions of Americans' voices heard. Would that work? Would that be enough to stop this radicalism?
Well, that's what is going to happen. As Leader McConnell described it, no one knows the rules better than he does, and no one is better equipped at unleashing this if it happens. If the Democrats move in this direction, they're going to find massive resistance from the Republicans, and I think we're going to be locked arms standing up to this. We'll do everything we can, because we cannot allow the Democrats to achieve what they want, which is one-party rule here in America. They want to use this H.R. 1 to basically put them in power till the end of time. So
do you believe, as I do, that it's unconstitutional, that it usurps the constitutional authority of state legislatures?
Certainly. Article 2, Section 1 clearly says that the domain of setting election rules falls strictly with state legislatures. No mention of Congress, no mention of federalizing the elections, but that's exactly what they're going to try to do. I do believe there's a huge constitutional problem, just as you said.
Well, I would argue even on the issue of court packing, which they're having, I guess, some stacked counsel or investigative unit look into the possibility of implementing that. How do you think the issue of D.C. statehood is going to play out? How do you think the issue of Puerto Rico statehood is going to work out?
I think they're going to, if they can get H.R. 1 through, they're going to continue to move in that direction. With statehood for D.C., with statehood for Puerto Rico, these are going to be the things that you've warned about. You warned about this during the election. And what's going to happen is they're going to come to fruition if we don't stand our ground and do everything we can to stop them from destroying the filibuster. And as you mentioned, this is just the beginning. If it went all the way to packing the court, we would literally destroy the Supreme Court in our Constitution.
We often talk about this mass migration, or people leaving high-tax, highly regulated, Democratic blue, deep blue states like New York and New Jersey and Michigan and California, and they're headed towards Texas and Florida, but many are also headed towards Tennessee and the Carolinas. And I love Tennessee. I have a heart for Tennessee. I lived 90 miles south of Nashville when I was broadcasting on a radio station in Huntsville, Alabama, early in my career, and I used to go up to Nashville all the time. And I love Music Row, and I love the city. I think it's amazing, and I love the state also. What I worry about for all of these red states, where you see this, a lot of people from these deep blue states moving, is that some people are going to bring their liberal, democratic, socialist policies with them. Does that concern you? Because it would concern me.
Well, thank you for acknowledging what I believe is the best state on earth, the Tennessee, and I encourage everybody to visit early and often because we're open for business in Tennessee. I think most of your listeners know that, but we're open for business and we're open for tourism there. With respect to the demographic trends, though, this has been going on for some time. Tennessee is one of the best managed states in the nation. We've had a conservative legislature that has kept our tax rates among the lowest in America. We've got a great business environment, and we've seen this movement underway. It's accelerating, though, Sean, and I think the concern that you raise is something that I hear very often from Tennesseans. But if we continue to stick to our principles, I think these people that are moving from California, from New York, from Michigan, from Illinois, will begin to see the power of our ideas and the power of our ideology.
I'm not so convinced. I mean, it's pretty radicalized in New York and California.
You live there every day, Sean. I don't know how you do it.
Listen, I'm tortured. I mean, I am literally a prisoner here, and I'm stuck. But I don't. One of the things that's sad to me is, You elect conservatives that are fiscally responsible, that don't believe in high taxes and a lot of regulation, and you balance your budgets, you fund your pensions, and now you got the big emergency COVID relief monies, tens and tens and tens of billions of dollars now that are going to be redirected to states that have always overtaxed and mismanaged and misappropriated so many billions of dollars. In other words, red states will be bailing out blue states. Right now, I'm the beneficiary of it. I don't want to be. It's not fair to Tennesseans.
Oh, it's not at all, and I can tell you Tennesseans are furious about this. I talk to folks from my home state every day. And
I don't want their money. They deserve to keep it.
They do not want to be bailing out mismanaged blue states and blue cities, and that's exactly what happened with this so-called COVID relief bill. Less than 10% of which is actually aimed at COVID. This was primarily about what you just described, Sean, and that's mending the past. The failed policies of these blue states and blue cities have been repaired on the backs of Tennesseans and other states that have been conservatively managed like ours.
I supported President Trump's tax plan because even though I no longer had the ability to deduct my state income taxes, which are significant in New York, 10%, and because that is not a benefit for you don't get the same benefit in Tennessee, the Carolinas, Florida, Texas, any red state. You don't get the same benefits at all. So basically what they're doing is they're rewarding blue state governors, big spending governors, tax and spend states for their irresponsible fiscal policies by taking money or offering tax cuts and abatements in a sense to deduct your state income tax. I bet you Biden brings that back, too. You watch.
It's such underscores their hypocrisy, Sean, when they do something like this. But what that did was it had states like Tennessee, just as you say, subsidizing the tax rates for folks in New York and other high tax jurisdictions. But that tax act that you talk about back in 2017, that was the beginning of President Trump's blue collar boom. That and deregulation put our nation on the fast track in terms of economic growth. You remember Barack Obama saying, "No, how are you ever going to get these jobs back? You must have to have a magic wand." Well, abracadabra, President Trump.
There you go.
Brought it back. Mm-hmm.
Well, you need to do more radio and TV because that message needs to be getting out more often. Senator Hagerty, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean. Great to be with you. Thanks.
My best to my friends in Tennessee.